when Trump talks about a wall, whatever that means in his head, but the notion that we cannot physically secure the southern border so that no illegal immigrant comes over, except through a port of entry, and then that we have very strict criteria for who we can let in, that I don't see why that should be impossible for the federal government to do. I don't see the moral objection to actually having a system whereby we can actually stop this. We're a big country, wealthy. This is the kind of project we could do, right? I mean, and yet it seems that no one really wants to do it.
The wall was dumb. That's the reason that people concerned about immigration should be so mad at Trump. So why is the wall dumb? Well, first, we need to understand what we're dealing with: two kinds of people: illegal immigrants and asylum seekers. Asylum seekers are not breaking the law. They're exploiting the law. They're gaming the law. They're not. An asylum seeker, his or her goal is to get to the border, make contact with a law enforcement official and say, I'm filing my asylum claim. And then you have to let me in because there are treaties and laws and judicial decisions. I'm not trying to evade contact with the authorities.
Right.
The illegal immigrant is trying to evade contact with the authorities, but illegal immigrants are not walking across the Rio Grande the way they did back in the 1990s. The way I would like you to think of an illegal immigrant is someone who arrived in the first place on some kind of visa legally, then the visa expired, and they didn't go home. And the wall's not going to.
That's always been the case. That's always been the case.
Well, it's now something like half of the illegal immigrants are overstayed. So the wall is not going to help. And the last thing about the wall is there is no approach to the border crossing that works if Mexico is not a partner. And so the whole Trump idea is that illegal immigration was something that Mexico is doing to us. So when he talks about mass deportation, what he thinks about is rounding up people and shoving them across the Rio Grande and sending them to Mexico, making them Mexico's problem because it's Mexico's fault in the first place. And that's just wrong and self-harming because there is no solution without Mexican cooperation.
But it would still require us to reform asylum laws to make them much tighter.
Yes, absolutely. You have to reform these.
And it's fascinating to me that the executive order that Biden did recently has drastically reduced by a very simple thing. Instead of asking them, are you fleeing persecution or are you in danger of your life? They don't ask. They have to volunteer it. If they don't volunteer it, they're sent back.
Yeah.
A very simple thing.
A lot of changes.
We've got to have to change the entire international system, have we not? We've got to say asylum is going to be a much tighter conditions, and we've got to have some deportation. We're both immigrants, right? So I'm pro-immigrant, but there is no enforcement mechanism that really works. I think something like 2% are actually deported at some point per year. Now, the odds are just overwhelming. I mean, I'm grateful to you because you have been very consistent on this question and regard it as important. Why are the Democrats, why did Biden just not understand that if this were to continue, he would be putting everything in jeopardy? That this is what would give Trump another lease of life, and it has given him a lease of life.
This is the first article I wrote for The Atlantic after Biden took power, was a warning because when he relaxed these border things, this is the worst mistake of his presidency and would cost dear. I mean, part of it is, I think there's this kind of tragic view of why asylum comes, because if you think of the people as just desperate and pathetic and tragic, then how can you stand in their way? And if you see them as ambitious and capable and using the opportunities, by the way, and I say this without moral, as you say, we're both immigrants. And if you are the third son of the second largest landowner in a village in Ethiopia, you do the same thing. And it's not a moral fault that they've done this. It's just not, it's not a moral fault that everyone wants to be on the freeway at the same time either, but we can't let everybody be on the freeway at the same time. You have to have a toll. So they saw that. Second, I think Biden's particular path to power involved making concessions to a faction of the party that then demanded a very high price for their tolerance. And that was a price that Biden took. And because he wasn't vigorous enough to rethink the deal, as it turned, when it began to go wrong, when he began to see how costly it was, that was part of the problem. A lot of this has to do with the deficiencies of Biden's presidency.